Hello, continuing from part one. So her face began to flip like an alarm clock or like a slot machine. And as it was flipping, with each flip, it's a new face, like of the Joker or the King or the Jester, the Knight, Bishop, whatever you want to call it. It was all these faces of royalty, basically. And I was quite surprised that I was seeing such a vivid image and that I didn't know I wasn't consciously thinking of this image to be seeing it. It was just coming to me. So in surprise, I kind of opened my eyes, and it was still there, and I could see it for a split second um, before it disappeared. So that experience was quite interesting, and would be one of the first of many, 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 many more to come, where I would have direct visions when I closed my eyes that I was not dictating, so to speak, with my mind. Um, then the other major thing that happened in this time in my life was at the age of 9, when I had my first conscious out-of-body experience, which I have yet to fully recapture as I did at this time. And it profoundly changed my life and the way that I look at the world that we live in. It was also when I was falling asleep, and I was in between waking and sleeping, and you know how one's mind will just wander. I started, I was thinking about death and the illusion of death, and even as a child, I just couldn't understand how everyone would just think that when we die, that's it, and ashes to ashes, dust to dust, and there's no meaning or there's no purpose for us to be here or whatever. That just didn't make any sense to me. And I couldn't believe that the spirit just dies and that nothing came after this. Just could not wrap my head around that. And part in that pondering of the illusion of death and knowing that there was something more, all of a sudden I kind of stepped back from myself for a second and realized that I was no longer in my body, that I was out of my body, and that I didn't know who I was or what I looked like or where I was or anything. I had completely stepped out and become one with everything and the universal consciousness, basically, within my astral self. And stayed there for a good amount of time, long enough to know that I was not in my body. And then quickly, not horribly quickly, decided to go back into my body, which I did very easily. So that really changed a lot because it was, in a way, the death of my ego. And I realized that, you know, there's definitely still a consciousness on in other realms that happens. It was kind of the spirit's ways of showing me that, yeah, they were kind of giving me the answer right there, saying, yeah, this is, there's a collective consciousness which you're a part of, and which you go back to, you know, when you die, and that's part of it, and that's part of everything. So those experiences fundamentally changed me as a person. I gained a lot of power and insight, and obviously raised a lot of questions. It was also around that time, also with the help of my inquisitive and science-based, science-minded mother, um, I started reading a lot of books on physics and was very interested in cause and effect and, you know, the chaos theory. I read The Chaos Theory by James Gleick, I think that's his name, when I was 11 years old, and this book blew everything out of the water for me. I was so interested in it. My mom's like, "You're really reading that?" I'm like, "Yes, I'm reading it," because it was amazing, because it basically was saying that no matter how many times something happens at the same time, it's always bound to deviate to some degree, even if it's not a huge degree. It's just showing like the true nature, transformative nature of the universe, and how basically debunking all of science as we know it, saying that, you know, you can say something happens very often, but you can't say something happens all the time and will happen with certainty, because this whole world is a world of illusion and nothing stays the same, ever. So, um, that that started changing things, and as you can see, it's still with me, and that understanding is growing. I'm going to wrap up this first part, I like to think of ages 3 to 11, and I became a young lady, um, to be the early years where I was introduced to these abilities that I had in many instances where I really wasn't trying at all, and it just happened. I have a lot of stories about dreams and everything else that I've just mentioned that I can go into detail if you'd like. So basically, this whole period, kind of one of the biggest things looking back for me now, also during this period, was that I was visited by a light being and also touched in my sleep. And I didn't realize then, or wasn't even truly fully aware consciously of the fact that, there are beings from outer space that love us and look after us. So, you know, now looking back, I'd say that was a huge thing as well. And after that point, years from then, things would start to accelerate. And I mean, that experience was literally, I was sleeping and I woke up and was completely awake to see being a body of light standing over my bed, reaching out to me, kind of looking down over me. And it was an incredibly peaceful feeling, and it was amazing. And they were telling me they were here with me and speaking to me. Also, something I should also mention before I get off of this early period of my life, a dream that I need to tell you about that I almost forgot. Um, I had a dream when I was probably 7 as well, um, where this is one of my first lucid dreams I can remember. Kind of, I'll just tell you the story. You're gonna, if you've seen, you will get the automatic association. But I was a, a baby. I was a child again, a newborn in a cradle that was made out of crystals, and I was in a crystal castle, and the whole place was full of rainbows and light, and it was beautiful. And I remember reaching up to the beings, and there were 5 or 7 of them. I can't remember, but they were all standing around the cradle, looking down at me, and I think they were some kind of they were a very elite group or a very special group in the sense that they all had, or maybe not, I thought they were special. They had these geometric symbols over their heads and strange shapes, hats and whatnot. I don't know, it's hard to explain. Um, and the whole place was full of light. And it was kind of like they were saying goodbye to me as well. And I was about to start a journey. And that dream was an amazing dream for me, and it's one that really stuck with me. And it was incredibly vivid. I will be starting a painting soon depicting that dream. But later on realized that, there was a lot more to that dream than I thought in the beginning. So that wraps up the early years. There's a lot more than that, but these are the biggest moments for me in my transformation. And coming up, I will be speaking of my teenage years when things started to heat up a bit and my vision became clearer. So that's all for the early years.